Hi, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rusty, and this is my horror movie and metal channel where I discuss, I wonder what, movies and heavy metal, mostly. So, I am glad to be back, and we are now going to take a dive. Now that I finished the Resident Evil series, we are going to take a dive into indie land where I like to stay most of the time. And we're going to go back to a 2005 movie that I love called 12 and Holding. Now, 12 and Holding is an indie dark psychological horror film in the vein of Stephen King. It's not by Stephen King, but it's very, very much in that vein of movie. If you like that type of dark, mental, psychological, dark places. 12 and Holding was released in 2005. It is directed by Michael Cuesta and written by Anthony Capriano, and it stars Conor Donovan, Jesse Camacho, and Zoe Weizenbaum, and, interestingly enough, a very early starring role by a very young Jeremy Renner, way before he was like a well-known name, and he is absolutely fantastic in this movie, and is absolutely gorgeous in this movie, and yeah, so this this type of movie really fits into the genre, like I said, of Stephen King. It really reminds me of a Stephen King movie, and I don't mean a creature feature or one of his more intensely horror movies like Carrie or The Shining or, anything like that. It's more along the lines of Dolores Claiborne and Misery and Shawshank Redemption, a little bit of the dynamics of It, where the kids are concerned, and The Green Mile and Stand By Me, very, very similar to those. So those are the types of movies that I categorize as being very, very similar to this. It's dramatic, and but it's very, very dark. If you think of Stand By Me, for instance, that is a movie that, it's not a creature feature, and there's no monster except for the horror aspects of humans themselves. If you notice in a lot of Stephen King's work, a lot of his darkness and horror is the darkness and horror of humans, not creatures or anything like that. So that is kind of, where I place this movie. So again, we're talking about 12 and Holding. Now the title, once you've seen the movie, the title really kind of makes sense. The four kids that are involved, like Stand By Me, like It, are, how would you say, on the cusp of turning 13, as this movie takes place in about a year's time from beginning to end, and it's the year between 12 and a half and 13 and a half. So that's where this movie takes place. Now, is that enough setup? Yeah, I think so. So we can move on now to story time. We love story time. I was kind of in a tease mood, so I wasn't going to give away the ending, but I went and checked to see if it was available anywhere to watch for free. But since it's not available to watch for free anywhere that I could find, then I guess I will give away the ending. This is a spoiler channel, so most of the time anyway. So yeah, I probably will tell the whole story because I hate telling an unfinished story. So 12 and Holding um, revolves initially around four kids. Now you have a set of identical, well, not identical, but um, they should be identical except for something that I will explain. A set of identical twins named Jacob and Rudy. Now, for the first 20 minutes, you never see Jacob because he's always wearing a Jason mask from Friday the 13th. He wears the Jason hockey mask for the first 20 minutes of the movie. So you are introduced to him, and him and his brother Rudy are running through the forest on their bicycles being chased by a couple of bullies. The bullies are named Jeff and Kenny. And they chase them into a treehouse. And, so the two brothers, they get up in the treehouse where they have, I guess over a period of time, collected a big bucket of urine. I guess they've been peeing in a bucket for a while. Um, and as Kenny climbs the tree to try to get into the treehouse, Rudy pours the bucket of piss onto these two bullies. Now remember, we're talking about 12-and-a-half-year-olds, so um, that, of course, infuriates them. Now, Kenny is the quintessential little pit bull bully, and Jeff is his tag-along. So they pour the piss on him, and they scream, "Vengeance is coming," and blah, 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 like bullies do. And there you go. You're introduced to these two kids. You are then introduced to the other two kids of this little gang of four. And they really do remind me of the kids in It, in that they are, and Stand By Me, in that you've got four of them, like in Stand By Me. But you also have, they're outcasts. The Losers Club from It. So you have these four kids, and for various reasons, they are the outcasts of the bunch. Now you're introduced to, like I said, one of the twins. Both of the twins actually. You are introduced to Mei Lee. She is the daughter of a psychiatrist who lives in town, and like most doctors, you've ever heard the saying, "Physician, heal thyself." Well, that's kind of where it comes from. I mean, this psychiatrist counsels people and sees everybody else's problems, but cannot see her own, and cannot see the problems of her own daughter. Her main issue is that her father has no interest in the mother or her, and so she's bitter about that. The mother's bitter about that. The mother really doesn't pay attention to her that much, and so she's kind of an outcast in that way. The other kid is Leonard. Now Leonard is a very obese kid, so he's just like Stand By Me, there was one in that as well. So you have Leonard, who is very obese, from a very, very obese family, and he's sort of an outcast because bullies pick on overweight kids, and so you have this little four group. Now you still have never seen Jacob, one of the twins, because he's got a fascination with the Friday the 13th Jason, and he's always wearing Jason's hockey mask. So that evening there is a big celebration in town. The bullies see Rudy, and you can see them kind of push each other. They're still being bullies, and we're going to get you back, and all of that. And Jacob ends up, telling the other three members of the group that they told him that they were going to tear the tear the treehouse down. So Rudy is going to go and protect the treehouse, and he enlists his brother Jacob, and the girl can't go. And Jacob refuses to go, and so it was just him and Leonard, him and the obese kid. They go, and they're kind of like as a little confrontation between Jacob and his brother Rudy, because they are going to go and do this, and Rudy is refusing to go and help. So that's fine. Unfortunately, as he leaves, he's like, if you're not going to come help, then you're a pussy. So that's, and you'll find out in a minute, that's the last thing that he ever hears from his brother. So they go and they wait in the treehouse to protect it, unbeknownst to them, and also, in fairness, unbeknownst to the two bullies. Leonard and Rudy are up in the treehouse, and the two bullies come with a Molotov cocktail, and they throw it up into the treehouse. Now, granted, they didn't know that they were in there. They were going to burn the treehouse down in vengeance, and they didn't know that the two kids were in there. So it bursts into flames, as you can imagine, and it's a really horrific scene, not because of what you see. The treehouse bursts into flames, but you hear poor Rudy burn to death, and they're not afraid to let you hear it. And it was kind of unnerving, because it was really not pleasant. Now Leonard, he manages to escape by trying to get out of the treehouse, and he falls and knocks himself out. The Jeff bully, he runs off, and again, trying to give a small amount of credit, Kenny tried to move Leonard out of the way, but of course he's too big and he can't pull him, he's so obese. And Rudy burns to death, and he takes off. Now, you are then transported to the funeral. Rudy is dead, and you are finally introduced to Jacob without the mask, at which point, I don't know if you can see it on the case, but Jacob has a facial birthmark. It's like one whole side of his face is a birthmark. And, so, yeah. So that's why he likes to wear the hockey mask, is because of this birthmark. Now, it's interesting, the only other movie that I've ever seen like that, and it instantly reminded me of it, is there's a movie called Heartless. And it's the only movie that I have seen where the protagonist, the main character, has that. They of course have the birthmark on him exaggerated on the movie poster, but it really does look like that, except it's not blazing red like that. But I want to do a video on that sometime too. And he has this giant heart-shaped, on one side of his face there's a giant heart tattoo. So that was just interesting little bit of trivia, is that I've only seen 2 movies where the protagonist has a facial birthmark like that. So it was kind of interesting that it made me think of Heartless. Heartless is a horror movie as well, a very, very interesting, mind-twisting horror movie, but that's for a different day. So we're transported to the funeral, where, as you can imagine, Jacob is absolutely devastated with guilt. The other 2 friends, Leonard is hurt and is in the hospital, and Mei Ling is destroyed, but especially Rudy. And of course the parents, whom you kind of had seen in that first 20 minutes, there was obviously some dysfunction going on in that they seemed to worship Rudy, the normal one, and Jacob, with that big facial birthmark. You can tell that he is treated like, and the parents aren't mean about it. Don't get that idea that they're cruel to him or anything like that. But it's pretty obvious that he feels like he is not the wanted one, and probably because of the facial tattoo. And I don't think the parents were doing it really maliciously or intentionally, but sometimes that's how bad parents are. You can be a good parent but still have bad aspects, and I think that they really did make Rudy feel like he wasn't quite as wanted, quite as loved, he wasn't the star. And that can happen without a facial birthmark where siblings are concerned. Parents showing favoritism. So each one of these kids is already messed up. They've already got issues. This death of Rudy, this horrible, horrible death, it destroys, the parents, and the kids are affected in a very, very dark, very, very dark ways. Leonard loses it's something that can happen when you have a serious head injury, which is what he got when he fell out of the treehouse. He loses his sense of smell and taste. Now, he is obese, extremely obese, from an extremely obese family, and now food means nothing to him because he can't taste anything. Even the doctor said, and I like the way this director dealt with that issue, but just like the director said, he's extremely obese. Maybe losing his sense of taste and smell will actually be beneficial. Now, his hugely obese parents didn't exactly appreciate that comment, but so his darkness is that he becomes obsessed with that. He becomes obsessed with losing weight. He becomes obsessed with being obese because now he can't even enjoy food, and he sees the results of his enjoyment of food, and he begins to have very, very dark dislike, especially for his mother. Mom always wants to fill you full of food, and so she's upset that he can't taste anymore, and she's upset because now he becomes obsessed with eating apples only. They can't get him to eat, so he becomes obsessed with eating apples and worrying about his health, because at least the apples crunch, and he has no taste. So he becomes obsessed with eating apples and becomes very darkly obsessed with a dislike for his parents and their obsession with food. That will come into play later. Mei Lee, her darkness is that she, in puberty, has just hit puberty, of course, at 12 and a half, and she becomes obsessed with being alive. She is introduced to death. She's already abandoned by her father. She has a emotionally detached mother, and now her best friend for years has been brutally murdered, even if it was accidentally. Brutally murdered by a couple of bullies, and she becomes obsessed with dying. So she starts doing very mature things. She wants to be a grown-up. Now that she knows the realities of death, she begins to want to do adult things and go ahead and get things done because she could die at any time. So that's how Rudy's death has affected her. Jacob, as you can imagine, is furious um, and guilty at his brother's death, and he becomes obsessed with vengeance about it. Now, his parents, especially his mother, she fuels that obsession because, and I'm totally right there with her. She is very, very vengeful. She wants these two children dead. No ifs, ands, or buts. No, she has, and and whether you like it or not, think about me what you will, but I'm that way. And the movie never punishes that thought. It doesn't make that thought and her bad for feeling the way that she does, and I like that. Um, because if you murdered my son, I don't care if you're 12 or 13. You're in trouble. And the parents like really get freaked out. The justice system hits another home run, and they give these two murderers, even if it was second degree or manslaughter, even. Um, I'm not a prosecutor, so I can't tell you exactly. I mean, I know it wouldn't be first degree because they didn't know that the kids were up there. But so it might be manslaughter, second degree murder, manslaughter. But in any event, these kids get off with just 1 year in juvie, a juvenile detention prison, and 5 years of probation. So you can imagine the mother. She has just lost her mind. And her son, Jacob, witnesses, this reaction. So, there is his darkness, is that he begins to become very obsessed with that. So, as we move on down the story, we start to see their darkness in the directions that these three kids are taking their darknesses. We begin to see the fruits of those dark thoughts. Um, Maylene, I keep calling her Maylee, she is sitting in her mother's office um, after the funeral, and she meets Jeremy Renner. Jeremy Renner, this is one of his first, starring roles. Way before, this is 2005, so it was way before, he's very young, and she meets him sitting in the office, and they get introduced, and that's where Jeremy Renner comes in. He is a patient of her mother's. Her mother's at the psychiatrist. He's being counseled about something, and he is like the fifth storyline in this movie, because there's something going on with him. He has got obviously some kind of extreme PTSD. He's seeing the psychiatrist about horrible nightmares and panic attacks and things like that. And we do not find out until the end of the movie what the hell is up with this dude. So you're left to think of all kinds of things during the movie. Did he do something bad? Is he a bad guy? Was he a serial killer? What is his trauma? But he is very damaged as well. And so he plays like a 30-year-old, a 28-year-old, something like that is what he plays in this movie. So Mei-Ling has met him. And Mei-Ling begins to develop an extremely inappropriate obsession with this grown-ass man. She is just on the cusp of turning 13, and yet she is like obsessed with this 30-year-old grown man. Now, as adults do, me included, Um, the guy is totally oblivious to it. He's being nice to a child whose mother is his counselor. So he's being nice to her. He's really not paying attention to her increasingly obsessive and, as we'll find out later, dangerous obsession with him. And Leonard, the obese kid, he continues to devolve into his darkness, and that is the extreme dislike for his parents. And their way is starting to make him act out. He's got two younger obese sisters. He starts beginning to do things like stealing all of their Halloween candy and throwing it away, showing his ass at family dinners, refusing to eat, calling his parents pigs, blaming them, for his obesity. While at the same time he still loves them. He still loves his mother. But he's blaming her for the condition that he's in. And he too is extremely brought to reality about a person's health. Your friend died. You can die. That's the main theme that these three kids and their darknesses are taking, is you can die. Live now. Now, Rudy's obsession, he can't have one because he's dead. Jacob's obsession with Rudy's death has begun to take a strange dark turn too. He begins to go behind his parents' back to the juvenile detention center where the murderers of his brother is housed, and he begins to visit them, to torture them with, pictures. He comes and he has these really disturbing conversations with each one of them when he visits them, showing them pictures of Rudy, talking about how he's going to kill them when they get out, what he's going to do to them. Now you might say, well, they didn't have to come to the visitation window to see him, right? Well, that's true. So you do kind of wonder, why does Kenny keep coming out and talking to him when this boy is literally torturing him about the mistake that he made? And he did try to apologize despite him being an absolute bully punk. You really don't have much sympathy for him, but you do have to admit that it was an accident, and he does try to tell that to the boy, but Jacob keeps coming and torturing him anyway. Now, they're of course flipping back during this movie between these stories, but I'm having difficulty telling each one of them story, in order, because it's flipping back and forth. So I'm trying to keep three storylines going at the same time here and keeping them in the correct timeline. So as Leonard gets more and more obsessed, Rudy is torturing the kids at the prison. Leonard is doing his thing, which is insulting his parents, and not really knowing what to do to get his anger out about what he feels that they've done to him with their obsession for food. So, and then of course, like I said, Jacob and his torturing of the kids at the thing. Now, moving on with his storyline, the mother comes into the kitchen one day. Now, the last visit that you saw Jeff. He had black eyes and stuff, and he was getting up and he was kind of crying, and then Kenny came in and had his turn with Jacob, who was like, what happened to Jeff? And he's like, oh, well, he pissed off the wrong guy and he's being beaten up in here. I guess that makes you happy. And Jacob was like, yeah, and Kenny's like, well, why do you keep coming here, and why do you keep reminding us and torturing us? And Jacob is like, well, you don't have to come out here and talk to me. Why do you come out here and let me visit? And he's he basically has to admit that it's the only time he gets out of his cell, and it's the only time that anyone sees him, which is a little telling right there. Um, like, where's his parents? Where's his mom? Uh, he's coming and letting someone torture him with horrible memories about what he did, when he doesn't have to. Obviously, this kid doesn't have anybody that cares about him. And Mei Ling, she has started. It turns out that she likes to go up in the rafters and eavesdrop on her mother's counseling sessions. Now she has become so obsessed with Gus, Jeremy Renner's character, that she actually gets information. She looks in her mother's records, gets his address, is spying on them through the vent in the roof, and knows, that his favorite song is "Burning for You" by Blue Oyster Cult. That he has nightmares about fires, and that he has panic attacks and stuff like that. And you know the work, the psychiatrist is trying to find out, why does all this started here lately, and it's because he took a construction job at this little construction site, which is the property where that treehouse was. Because as soon as that happened, this guy, the friend of the father who wanted to buy that property and he wouldn't sell it, has now bought it, because once his son was killed on the property, he wanted to get rid of the property. So Jeremy Renner's character Gus is on the construction crew that is now going to build like shopping center on that land where the boy died. I guess Gus, hearing that a kid had burnt to death here, has set off his PTSD. We still don't know why, though. So Mei Lee has discovered this, and she goes, and like I said, this little girl has gotten dangerous. She goes and breaks into his apartment. She's going through his stuff. She's doing very creepy things, like smelling of his underclothes, if you know what I mean. It's very, very creepy. It's very creepy. And while she's there, and this is like a super creepy scene, while she's there, she hears him come in. He's kind of half drunk, but he's not drunk. But he's not drunk, but he's had a couple. And he comes in, and she had just found a gun, a big gun. It looked like a .44 caliber, but no, it didn't. It looked more like, it looked more like a .45 or something. It was a big old gun, and she was like looking at it. Now remember, she has listened to their counseling session. She knows that he's got mental issues, so you can tell that she was going to steal the gun. Not because she wanted to do something with it, but because she knows his situation and she's afraid that he's going to kill himself or something. So when he starts coming in the door, she gets under the bed, which is like really super creepy, because she is in his room and she is spying on him. And he, is like a little tipsy but not drunk. And he, of course, goes in there to take a shower, and here she is under the bed watching him while he takes a shower. So, a little side note, if you're a fan of Jeremy Renner, that is a nice nude scene. So, just keep that in mind if you're interested. You get to see Jeremy Renner's everything back when it really mattered. But so yeah, he takes off all of his clothes and he gets into the shower, not knowing that this girl is underneath his bed spying on him and watching him. And he starts having a very bad breakdown. He starts screaming, crying. Now he's got his face to the tile, so his back is to her. The shower's open, and he is crying and having a complete emotional breakdown. And you're like, WTF, man? Something is wrong with this dude. And she actually gets out from under the bed and comes up to him. And it's a very uncomfortable scene, because you're like going, oh my God, if there was some kid behind me in my room, I'm having an emotional breakdown, I'm buck naked in the shower, and right behind you, unbeknownst to you, is a 12-and-a-half-year-old, or 12 and 10 months, or whatever it was, right near 13. It's standing behind you, and she reaches out in pity and starts to put her hand on his shoulder, and I'm just like, oh God, no, don't do that. Oh shit. Because what would you do? Granted, you would turn around and know the kid, but you're in the all together, and you're having a breakdown, and so she gets like that close to putting her hands on his shoulder, and you're like, oh God, what's going to happen? And then she recoils and she walks out and she leaves him to sob and have his breakdown in the shower. This little girl's gone nuts, in my opinion. But so she ends up going, and they meet. The three meet in the basement, and she gets rid of Leonard to go get a drink, where she then informs Jacob. She shows him the gun and asks him to hide it, and he's like, oh my God, what is that? Where'd you get it? She's like, I can't tell you, but trust me, just hide it from me, because it could save someone's life. And so that's when you kind of knew why she stole it, was because she was scared that Gus, who she has a extreme crush on, is going to, well, no, I wouldn't say crush. This is way beyond crush, right? But she stole it so that he wouldn't kill himself. So now you have that situation. Leonard, it's time to hit his rock bottom in his darkness. His father, who goes on a vacation every year and takes him, informs him, because of the trouble that's been going on, that he's going to take the two girls alone, and he's going to stay home with Mom. So he's like, whatever, because he's got issues with them now. And they leave, and you see him down in the basement, like boarding up the windows and pulling a mattress down there and stuff like that, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And he fakes a fall to get his mother to come down there, where he imprisons her in the basement. He's got the windows all boarded up. Where they live, no one can hear her. She's down in the basement. The windows are boarded up. Since she's so obese, once he got her down the stairs and he's lost so much weight, he was able to run up the stairs way before she could get back up the stairs, and he locks her. He, like, with a screwdriver, he, like, boards up the door so she can't get out. And he basically proceeds over the next week to, like, starve her to death, is what he's trying to do. But only at her own choice, because he comes to a side window in the house that is a little slide glass thing, and he puts water and apples and salads and healthy food in there for her, and tells her that he's trying to save her life. Because remember, this is all stemming from their best friend being brutally murdered, so they all have these really bad reactions to the reality of what life is and how you can lose it. So since he's become obsessed with his own health, he is now obsessed with his mother's and his father's, and he has imprisoned her in the basement and is starving her down there in the heat, and stuff like that. So trying to keep everything straight here in the timelines. Let's jump back to Jacob. Jacob once again walks in and hears his parents freaking out. Where you know, the mother comes into the room smiling with this big smile on her face, and the father looks sad, and Jacob is sitting there. Now, this was right after that last visit I told you about, that he went to the prison. She comes out with this big smile on her face, and yet the father looks terribly sad. And Jacob asks what's going on, and she informs him that Jeff committed suicide in his cell that night. Now, you can see on the look on Rudy's face that he was a little bit disgusted at the fact that his mother was smiling so big about it, and it explained why his dad looked sad, because his dad had never felt that way. He was very angry, and he was very upset at their sentence, and but he did believe it was an accident, and he did believe the kids deserved a lot more than what they got. But he wasn't like the mom, as in wanting them dead. Like, I will be satisfied with nothing less than death for them. So she was thrilled, and Rudy, and unbeknownst to her, right, she had to think, in Jacob's head, he knew that he had just made that boy cry, once again torturing him the day before about what he had done. And now that boy had committed suicide. So you kind of know that probably torturing him about what they didn't help. So, like I told you, it's very, very Dolores Claiborne, Misery, Stephen King type darkness. You know, there's no blood and gore going on, but there's a lot of dark themes going on. So, Rudy actually goes back to the prison, where he informs Kenny that he's actually sorry about Jeff. He begins to develop a sort of friendship with Kenny. And, you know, Kenny then informs him that he's going to get out with early parole. You know, because he had been a model prisoner. So he was getting out early, and Jacob wasn't happy about it, but at the same time, they had been developing this weird friendship. And Kenny ends up informing him that when he gets out, he's running away to where his dad lives in Santa Fe. And Jacob is like, no, well, you'll get in trouble. You're not supposed to leave the state and stuff like that. He's like, nobody will care. And that's where he kind of informs you of his home life, which is probably why he was a bully. The whole time he had been in there, his mother had never came visited him. That's why he continued to let Jacob torture him, because Jacob was the only one who came to see him in prison. You know? So you kind of got an idea of what his home life was like, and he was going to run away. Well, when Jacob gets back home that night, his parents inform them they're going to adopt another fucking kid. And he's like, you still have me. It's just like before. You know, you favored Rudy over me. And now you're going to adopt another kid to replace Rudy. Inappropriate. Just wrong. You know what I mean? So he's going to run away with Kenny, the guy who murdered his brother. He's going to run away with him when he gets out. And back to Leonard. Leonard's mom is trapped down there in the basement, and while he's cooking her dinner, he spills something on the stove, and he turns off the stove. But then when he tries to clean up the stove, he knocks the gas back on. doesn't know it. So he had given his mother some healthy food. He's sitting there, and the house is filling up with gas, and he doesn't know it. Now the mother is down there, and she starts to smell the gas. Rudy has passed out on the couch. He's fixing to die. I mean, Rudy. I keep saying Rudy. Leonard has passed out on the couch. He's fixing to die. The mother smells it. Now, this kind of shows you what adrenaline can do, because she had tried to get through that damn door many times. But when she smelled the house full of gas, that adrenaline kicked in, and she broke a hip and 3 ribs getting out that door to get to her son, who had imprisoned her. And he is nearly dead on the couch. So they both wake up in the hospital. And he goes in there and apologizes to his mother and says, did you tell Dad? And she's like, no, I didn't tell your dad. And then she actually admits that she will try to eat healthy and lose weight and stop all this obesity nonsense. And she forgives him, and so they kind of end on a good note, his story. Mei Lee, the conclusion of her story is that she goes and breaks back into Gus's house again. And she gets all dressed up, makeup, stuff like that, cooks a dinner, cleans up his room, his apartment, cooks a dinner, and is waiting for him when he got home after work. So he walks in and finds this kid in his house, looking like a Japanese hostess. And he's like, it all hits him. What the hell are you doing? And she's like, I thought we could be together. And it just like blows him away, because he like it just didn't see this shit coming. And she stands up and drops her clothes. And he gets very disturbed, as you should. Very quickly, she runs up and grabs him. And he just tries to be calm with her and puts a jacket on her and says, this is no. And goes to the phone and calls her mother to come get her. So the mom was very, very embarrassed. And, yeah. Now Jacob, going back to him, Jacob, he waits that night. He has this new kid in the house. It's like a little younger than him that they have now adopted. And that was the final straw for him. So he's going to run away with Kenny. And he packs a little bag and he goes and he meets Kenny out on the road, where, Kenny's like, you're acting strange. And he's like, well, that might be true, but everything's fine. So he's like, we're going to go this way, through that construction site. So he's going to go through the construction site, and Kenny is like, why? And he's like, because it's a shortcut and we can get to the railroad tracks quicker. So you're like, okay. And then he's like, he gets and he pulls that Jason Voorhees mask out and puts it on. And Kenny's like, why are you doing that? And he's like, because didn't you bring a disguise? And he's like, nobody's going to care that I'm gone, And so he's like, whatever. So they go through the construction site. When they get to the middle of the construction site, where the treehouse used to be, Jacob puts his bag down, and Kenny stops and turns around and asks him what's going on. What's he doing? And Jacob pulls that gun out. And you're like, oh shit. So he pulls that gun out, and he says, "You killed him. You murdered him." And Kenny once again says, "It was an accident." Is that real? What are you doing? Don't, do that. And he shoots him dead. He kills him. Didn't see that coming. I didn't. I was just like, oh, fuck. I mean, this movie is dark. So, just like his mom wanted, he killed Kenny, just like he said he would that very first day at the beginning of the movie, when the first time he ever went and saw him, and he said he was going to kill him when he got out. He just basically sociopathed that little boy right to his death, befriending him, saying he was going to run away with him. Was that all? Wow. So he drags his body over there to the construction site, where he digs a hole and buries it inside the foundation area of the shopping center, and puts the gun, the bag, Kenny's bag and everything, in there, and covers it up. And it's raining, so that smoothed out the ground. The next day, he comes and watches them pour the foundation, knowing that that kid is never going to be found. The mother doesn't care, right? Kenny's mom, she doesn't care. So he just stone cold got away with brutally murdering that boy. And he goes back home and sits down on the steps, and the mom looks out the window, and you can tell he's all sad and everything, and that's the end of his story. The end of Mei Li's story is that, the mother gets her home and has a discussion with her, kind of like, I don't know what to say. The girl starts talking about her dad again, and the mother agrees to take her to see him, warning her, though, that the man doesn't want nothing to do with her, but if that will make her happy. The mother has had an awakening that she needs to pay attention to her daughter, because basically her daughter has just tried to molest a grown man. So that ends up with that way. The mom is going to take her to see the dad. Jacob has murdered. He basically talked one of the murderers into committing suicide, and has shot and buried the other one. And they'll never find him. They'll never find him because he's underneath a shopping center now. That was slick. I wonder what he's going to be when he grows up, yeah? And Leonard, he nearly kills his mother over eating too much. So, yeah, these kids reacted really dark. And the last storyline, which is Gus, when he goes the next day to see Mei Ling's mom, the psychiatrist, she apologized and said, "I'm so sorry for what my daughter did, I'm so glad you didn't call the police, talk about a role reversal, right? Instead of a grown-up trying to get after, to get after a kid, you've got a kid who, like, breaking and entering, voyeurism, and attempted sexual assault on a grown man. Because he could have done that. Technically, that's exactly what she did. So, it's pretty freaky. But he tells the mother that it's okay, that it was actually sort of cathartic for him, and she wanted to know, why. And he then explained, and we find out what this poor man's problem had been. And that was, he was a firefighter. That was his career. And he had went and fought a fire. And at this fire, this particular fire where an entire family had been killed, when he walked upstairs, he found a little girl about Maylee's age who was going to die, no doubt. But she was not dead yet. She had like half of her face had been burnt off, and he, as a firefighter, knew there was 0.000 chance that anything was going to happen to her but death. And so did the little girl. The little girl had to be in monstrous pain and begged him to finish her off, begged him to kill her because it hurt so bad. And that's what he did. He did what she wanted him to do, which is he smothered her so that she could go ahead and die and stop happening what was happening to her. And that was his trauma. And the psychiatrist said, that's absolutely horrible. That you know, no wonder you're fucked up. But how did what my daughter attempt to basically rape you, what did that have to do with, how did, and he said, because when I walked in and she did that, I saw the same look in her eye that I saw in that girl. That's how much pain she's in. And that's what woke the mother up and told the mother that she needed to pay attention to her daughter's needs, because her daughter was, if she did not intervene and get her daughter head straight, her daughter was going to end up worse. And that's why she agreed to take her daughter and stand by her to see this man, her father, so that he could tell her face to face that he didn't want nothing to do with her. And we went on for an entire hour, and I am so sorry. I thought I could tell this story. This story is so amazing. This movie is so amazing. And I guess I couldn't tell it in any less than an hour. Sorry about that. But yeah, I'll try to wrap it up. But you have to have this movie if you're a movie collector. And if you like dark psychological horror, if you like Stand By Me, if you like Shawshank Redemption, if you like, some of the parts of the storyline of It, The Losers Club, if you like movies like that, then you will love this movie. It is a masterpiece, in my opinion. And yeah, you have Leonard, Jacob, and Maylee on the cover there. Fantastic film, independent film. The director, the writer, director Michael Cuesta and Anthony Cipriano, starring Conor Donovan, Jesse Camacho, Zoe Weizenbaum, and of course Jeremy Renner. I know someone that has a big problem with him on another channel. They make fun of her for having a problem with him, or they use him to aggravate her or something. I'm not a super fan. I like some of his movies, but he is absolutely fantastic. Jeremy Renner is absolutely fantastic in this movie. And the actors, the acting, the cinematography, and that whirlwind of a story, you will love it. If you like psychological dark storytelling, like Dolores Claiborne in Misery, Shawshank Redemption, you know, normal stories with very, very dark, dark undertones. That's what this movie is. So, yes, if you don't, I think you can. I think the only place that I saw it was for rent on that Amazon Prime. Yeah, rent buy from that, and it didn't have any other watch options. I checked Vudu, and it's not on there either. But of course, I bought it. You can go and buy it if you want it in your collection. But it's a fantastic movie. Thank you for stopping by. My notes just fell. Sorry that that lasted an hour. I got I got to telling the story. If you want to know what my notes look like, they look like that. Look at that shit. It looks like I'm writing a book. That's how much when I love a movie, I've got to write down, you know, like, oh, this made me think this, and this made me think that, and this is my thoughts on that. I write a fucking psychology thesis on every fucking movie I see, it seems. That's the way it looks. So that's what you see me like glancing out every once in a while. I didn't even have to look at that one much though, did I? But yeah, if you love anything about this type of movie genre, check it out. It's not exactly blood and guts slasher or anything like that, but it's a seriously dark movie with seriously dark undertones, and some very brutal stuff, you know. What was that? Yeah, Rudy's death is horrible. Him killing Kenny blew me away. You know, the obese kid locking his mom in the basement. This girl trying to molest a grown man. Yeah, I mean, this movie gets pretty dark in a lot of places. So, yeah, 12 and Holding, check it out. It's a fantastic independent horror movie, as you will hear a lot here on my channel. Support indie horror and indie filmmaking and indie filmmakers, especially indie horror filmmakers. And I will see you in the next video, which I'm supposed to film. I've got 3 ready that I'm going to try to film. I didn't expect to talk for an hour about this one though. But yes, see you in the next one. Love you, miss you, bye. Red Rusty's out. Keep screaming very loud, but only when appropriate. Bye bye.